Just looking online here, I'm not seeing any indications. If there are any further apologies that arise, just sure let me know. It's no worries. Okay. And item 2, just to sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 11th of March 2025. I've already done that. And then item 3, which is declarations of interest. And I see Councillor Errol Thompson indicating.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Declaration of interest in item 4.1 is the grant aid panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I see Councillor Buchanan indicating online.
Just involvement of some of the groups there that received funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Oh, yeah, John.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair.
Good.
Yeah, Chair. Yes, also a declaration of interest in relation to 4.1 for a number of groups that have received grant aid.
Good stuff. Okay. Yeah, I'm not seeing any further indications, and I'll just declare an interest myself in item 4.1 grant aid panel, just as a governor at Drummer Integrated College, and also being associated with the Golden Apple players. So, yeah, if there's no further declarations, just add if there's anything that comes up during the meeting. We move on then to reports for decision. Item 4.1, which is to consider report of the grant aid panel, paper A.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report then is to request that members approve the recommendations of the grant aid panel meeting that was held on the 1st of April in respect of the first grant aid call for 25-26, which is outlined in the report attached to Appendix 1, and then also to note the grant aid allocations up to a maximum of £500 in respect of the first grant aid call of 25-26. So I suppose a couple of key points just to pull out then from the report to draw attention to. So I suppose just to note then that the full suite of council grant aid and bursary streams opened for applications on the 12th of February and they closed on the 12th of March. And as part of that, we also then held drop-in information sessions in each of the DEAs. And we've also then set out some detail around dates of the other programmes. At 2.1.3, you will note, members, that this particular report then is looking at the grant streams that were presented, which are the 5 different funding streams there. So ending violence against women and girls, Good Relations Schools Programme, Irish in the Community, and Ulster Scots in the Community. Members will also note then that the remaining grant aid and bursary streams, which are set out then at 2.1.4, they will be presented to a grant aid panel to be held on the 29th of April. And then the outcome of that then would be reported to a subsequent committee meeting. Members will also note there we've set out the criteria against which the funds were assessed. And then also the assessment process that was undertaken is set out there at 2.1.6. And also important to note that there is an appeals panel that's been established for this and for obviously other grant aids, and any applicant wishing to appeal the decision then can avail of that. And I suppose as part of that, if you were going to appeal, we would also encourage anyone to get in touch with us to discuss it in the first instance as well. So I'll maybe just take members then, if you don't mind, to Appendix 1 of the report, which really sets out then the detail of the grant aid panel. It sets out the detail in terms of the numbers of applications we received, and then the detail around the successful and also unsuccessful applicants. So if I can just then note that we had the ending violence against women. So we have the detail of that set out at Appendix 1. And then we also have the detail of the organisations that were successful and unsuccessful in terms of Good Relations. There's then the detail in terms of our Good Relations Skills Programme. And then we move on to Irish in the Community, which is at 1.4 of the report. And then we move on to Ulster Scots in the Community, which is at 1.5 of the report. Also attached then to the main report are the draft minutes of that grant aid panel meeting, which was held on the 1st of April. So then if I just take us back then to the committee reports. So it's recommended that the council approves the recommendations of the grant aid e-panel meeting held on the 1st of April in respect of the grant aid panel report attached to Appendix 1, and notes the grant aid allocations up to a maximum of £500 as outlined in the grant aid panel report attached to Appendix 1.
Thank you very much, Sinead. And we're going to go to Councillor Withers.
Sorry, Chair, just a conflict of interest to declare as well there as a chair or as a member of the Board of Governors in St Albert Plunketts. Thank you.
No worries. Councillor McElduff.
Clearly, Chair, just to declare my interest in Irish in the community, that 1.4, an unsuccessful applicant here, and Harry Warney of Columkill, Carrickmore Gaelic Football Club. But I suppose in general terms, there's a large number of applicants in relation to that scheme, Irish in the community, who did not meet the required scoring threshold. So there must be a gap in understanding between the applicant bodies and the council in relation to what is on offer here or what's not on offer, because that's an unduly large number of people who did not meet the required scoring threshold. I think it used to be like an all-day intensive Irish language course would have scored, Jane Cursa Ian Lay or Jane Cursa on Lay, and that would normally be 3 tutors, well qualified tutors, and taken 3 different levels or 4 different levels in an intensive class. So in the past, it seems to me that those Jane Kersey were successful, but it seems to be they're unsuccessful in the here and now. And I wonder why is that? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I don't have the detail as to why those particular applicants weren't successful. But I suppose what I would do is encourage them to get in touch with officers in the council to get some feedback, and then if they wanted to avail of the appeals process, they could do that.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay. And on to Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. And to start with, I'm happy to propose the recommendations as set out. But in terms of Appendix 1, I just would I'm delighted that there's so many applications with 603. That's excellent. I think that's something that we need to look at for next year when we're setting estimates and so on, to see if we're meeting the demands of the community out there. Because in terms particularly of the Irish language and the Ulster Scots in the community, there's a certain budget. So I'm imagining demand is where people are falling down. There's probably very little between who's successful and who's not. But I would be interested maybe at the end of the year to see how many of the 603 we're actually able to fund. And I would be interested in a report coming back on the types of projects that people are putting forward. To maybe is there a programme that we can put forward for any of this range of grant-aid bursary streams to maybe meet the demands that are out there in the community, just to take a fuller look at it as opposed to just a high level like that. So maybe at the end of the financial year, we could have a look at that before the estimates next year. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Councillor Barton.
Thank you. And again, I'm also delighted with the number of applicants, but my question is in relation to the applicants that did not meet the required scoring thresholds. I think you referred to perhaps the applicants, Sinead, getting in touch with you. The council doesn't make any effort to contact the applicants and say, you were 2 marks off scoring, of being accepted for receiving, meeting the threshold. You were not successful because of X, Y, and Z.
Well,
Chair, as far as I know, we would provide, I suppose, an outline in the response back. But in terms of an actual detailed feedback, I think we would be encouraging then that the applicants to get in touch with officers to receive that. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. Just again on what Councillor Barton there was saying, and in relation to a lot of the applications that didn't meet the criteria, I suppose, would there be a possibility that there's a lot of applications very similar, and that council then has to come up with some criteria to exclude, because we haven't enough money in the pot to cover everybody. Like I was just looking through there, like Friends of the Farm, looking £1,500 for a community garden and animal care program. To me, sounds like an absolute no-brainer. That's a great project. The next one, Enniskillen Galaxy Football Club, cross-community football tournament at Enniskillen. Unless the application was terrible, I would have thought that was something that the council should be supporting straight away. You know, any events cross community. You know, down then Crone Ladies GFA. Some are good relations in Oma. Again, another very good event that doesn't seem to be getting across the thing, and then not taken away from some of the ones that did get, but wouldn't seem to be of that standard of the cross community inclusion and all of that. So I'm just wondering, does the criteria, does it need to be re-looked at in that, you know, because there's an old chestnut of mine that unless you have the buzzwords, you could have an event that really isn't that good getting grant funding because they've hit all the buzzwords, and some event that would be brilliant for the community, for cross-community work and that didn't hit the buzzwords but won't get it. You know, so I'm just wondering, is there something that can be re-looked at where maybe real good events has fallen through because somebody just doesn't know the buzzwords to say?
John?
Chair, yeah. I suppose the criteria is laid out before the applications are open. And it is, suppose it is the application itself is the only thing that we can go on in relation to the scoring matrix that is associated then with that pre-agreed criteria. So it is on the quality of the application itself. And there's no doubt about it that every single one of these projects, you know, probably deserve to get funding. But I suppose they are marked on the basis of the agreed criteria. What I can say is that officers in good relations can work with those groups that weren't acceptable or that didn't meet that criteria in order to work with them for future years, like, you know, in education more than anything else about what it takes in order to pass that criteria in order. And you, Councillor Green is absolutely right. It is based on what is written there. It is based on the outcomes of what they want to achieve. So maybe it is about refining and trying to fine tune those applications in order to try and make them successful.
Let you in briefly, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Much appreciated. I suppose, I would agree with that, but there seems to be an awful lot of cross-community work on that's fallen through the cracks on it. Just one other one there that caught me eye because it seems to be a kind of an outlier. Enniskillen Gales Brewster Park Community Sports Day. Look, for 1,500 got 750, whereas every other group seemed to get basically what they were asking for. How did that? Was that their application obviously met the criteria, but they got the half of what they were asking for? I think one of the very few that did.
Again, Chair, to go into the individual, I'd need to take a look at the application as to the reason why it was halved. But again, it's all got to do with the criteria. But certainly can come back to Councillor Green in relation to that specific application.
Okay. Can I go to Councillor Campbell here?
Coming up to Carly, just declare an interest in Commonwealth Scale and Ramore as a member, and also St. Ronan's Recarson Primary School. My wife's an employee. Move it.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
I've declared an interest, but I just remind councillors that it is a cross-party panel. The chair was actually missing, which is Councillor Withers was missing on today, but it was a cross-party panel of councillors that sat on that particular grant aid panel. And it's the same with the appeals panel. Just a reminder. Thank you.
Information. Yeah, okay, sure. Point of information, Councillor Green.
Point of information, as far as I'm aware, the councillors that sit on the panel don't even see the application, so I think my point still stands.
Councillor McElduff, and I think we still need a seconder for the proposal.
My question would be simply this: is there a second call in the year, or is the next call for these particular schemes 2026?
Chair, it all depends on the budget that was allocated, and some of them there will be a second call. For others where the budget is totally exhausted, there won't be. But I think for many of them that there are.
Could we be informed as to which categories there will be a second call for later this year and when the opening date would be? Thank you, Chair. Cormac.
Okay, and Councillor McColgan.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the director had said that groups that weren't successful could avail of officer help into the future. But I'm wondering, when applications are made or before they're made, are groups made aware of that, or is there help in filling the initial application? Is that available?
Chair, you can imagine 603 applications to go round and to give a guarantee that the individual help would be given to each individual group in advance just wouldn't be possible. And that's
not asking the guarantee, but I'm saying that if it's going to be made available to groups that have been unsuccessful, is there, for groups who feel they don't have the capacity but have a good idea, is there help available initially?
The help is there if they request help. I think it would be better for groups, if they have a good idea or whatever, to communicate not just in advance when the call is made, but even during the year. If they're in communications with, for example, the good relations officers or whatever, then it would be a good idea to be early communication in relation to that, because you can imagine with the number of applications coming in, if all of the groups start asking questions at one time, it just wouldn't be possible to facilitate it. Chair, just in relation to Councillor McElduff's query on which calls, if on Appendix 1, I think page 3, the grant aid, you will see there that the only fund that it will reopen again is that in violence against women and girls, where the recommended allocations is below the budget available.
Okay, Sinead.
Chair, I was just going to come in on Councillor McColgan's question. Just to suppose to flag that there were those information sessions that were held in advance or during the call. So I suppose there would have been that opportunity as well for anyone to have got advice at that point as well.
Okay. I mean, it seems to me that there's quite clearly a significant amount of talent and skill and offers being made by community groups in wider sectors within the district. And it's just a question about making sure that those appropriate contacts are being made with council in a timely way in advance, just to make sure that people get the best possible opportunity whenever they're making their applications. But obviously that's also just against the context of a always a finite budget, but hopefully just try and give people the best possible chance. Members, we still don't have a seconder, if Councillor McColgan. Okay, I'm not seeing any further indications. Are we content with the recommendations? Okay, good. Thank you, folks. Going on then to item 4.2, which is to consider report on various tourism initiatives, paper B.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report is to provide an update on some tourism initiatives and I suppose in essence really relate through to our visitor experience development plan. So the first one relates to our visitor experience development plan delivery partnership we held a meeting of the partnership in Glen Park Estate on the 25th of March. And the minutes of that meeting then are attached to Appendix 1 of the report. And at the meeting, members received presentations from a number of groups. We had a presentation from Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful. We had an update on the tourism vision and action plan from Tourism NI. And then we also had an update on current and proposed activity from Waterways Ireland. And that detailed report then that was presented and discussed at the partnership meeting is also attached for information at Appendix 2. And then we also had updates from the various different organisations that were in attendance. At the meeting, it was agreed that there would be a series of workshops scheduled in over the coming weeks, which would really be an opportunity for the VD partnership members and then also the tourism industry to discuss the actions that we would hope to look at as part of our sub-regional economic plan, so that those tourism actions then could be adequately reflected in that action plan for Fermanagh and Omagh as we progress with that work. And then the second part of the report then is the aspect then that is for consideration and decision. And this relates to Balmoral Show 2025. So the Balmoral Show is due to take place from the 14th to the 17th of May this year. And as we know, it's obviously the annual premier agricultural and food showcase event in Northern Ireland. So it's been suggested in a number of discussions that there would be value in the council attending the show alongside food producers from the district. So to explore that and take it forward, officers have engaged with Food NI to establish the options that might be open to the council to facilitate the attendance. Food NI have agreed to make space available within the food pavilion that they have at the event, should we wish to avail of it, and they've been holding some space for us in that regard. So the approach would see the council attending the event over 4 days of the show, and that would be alongside then a different food producer each day of the event. To scope out the interest in attendance, we did issue out a gauge and interest email, if you want to call it, to the industry. Now, we had fairly limited response back to it, but the timescale for response was quite short, but we did have approximately 5 people come back to say they would be interested. So I suppose in terms of the recommendation, we're recommending that we would progress a pilot this year to attend the show for 4 days alongside 4 food producers. And in the pilot, it would be proposed that the council would cover the cost of the exhibition space of the 4 food producers, but that any then additional ancillary costs then would be met by the individual producers themselves. And then subject to member agreement regarding attendance, the next step would be to progress a formal expression of interest out to the industry to identify the 4 food producers that would attend. Now, obviously, given the timescales and just given that the show isn't very far away, it would be proposed that we would issue, obviously subject to agreement tonight, that we would issue the expression of interest ahead of the May council meeting. But we would note in that expression of interest that it's subject to council approval. And it would also be proposed that the Food NI criteria that is applied to those who attend would also then be applied in this regard. But if there was significant interest in attending, then we may need to have additional selection criteria. And then just to note as well that following the pilot, we would undertake an evaluation really to understand the value of the council's participation, which would then help us decide whether we want to participate at future shows. So also just to draw members' attention just to the financial aspect then, so the costs associated with attending the show would be estimated to be approximately £4,000, and they would have been included within the economic and development investment budget for the current financial year. So in terms of the recommendations then, it's recommended that the council notes the update regarding the VD delivery partnership meeting and approves a pilot to attend the 2025 Balmoral show alongside 4 food producers as set out at section 2.2 of the report.
Thank you very much. And we go to Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I want to commend the officers for bringing this report to us. I think the idea around a pilot scheme of attending the 2025 Balmoral show is a fantastic idea. So I'm more than happy to propose that we go with the recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. Go to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, like Councillor Green, first of all, I want to second his proposal. the recommendation that we have a pilot this year and see how it goes. But it's certainly a great opportunity to have a showcase of this council. A lot of the time we talk about us in the West who were left out. And it's an opportunity for the whole of Northern Ireland. People come from the Republic, people come from across the water to see what our council area can do and the businesses within. So I'm happy to second the proposal and happy to second the recommendations. If Councillor Green's proposing recommendations, I'll second them, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for that. And Councillor Barton.
Thank you. I do think this is a wonderful opportunity for the council to showcase what we have in the West. But I'm particularly interested in the cost, the estimate cost to be about 4,000 for taking part in Balmoral show. That 4,000, does that include the 5 groups that have shown an interest? You spoke of 5 groups that had shown an interest for them to exhibit.
Sure. So what we have undertaken so far is essentially a gauge and interest. So we had 5 responses back to that. The next step then would be actually to go out with our formal expression of interest. So what we're saying is we would have opportunity for just 4 producers. So that would cover the cost then of those 4 producers to exhibit. They would share the space with the council. So it would cover the space and then any, I suppose, advertisement banners that we need to do as part of that as well.
So they're not extra. Paying for them is not extra.
No, the four producers would be part of that space, yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just to declare an interest in 4.2 as an employee of Waterways Ireland.
Okay, that's noted. Councillor McElduff.
Just to commend the initiative relating to the Balmoral show. It's really good. It's sensible, it's progressive, and it's real good practical assistance to local companies. You know, people say, you know, what do I get for my rates? Do I get my bin emptied? You know, they associate rates with bins, right? Whereas there's much more to the delivery of the council. And that's just one small example of really practical business support help. And I could just see that now, you know, in that food area, that food exhibition area, that tent or whatever, that 4 local companies will definitely derive genuine benefit from that. And obviously there'll be quality as well, because we do have quality producers, and anybody that meets that criteria, good luck to them. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm not seeing any further indications in the chamber or online, and got that proposed by Councillor Green and seconded by Councillor Thompson. And we agreed? We're agreed. And the job. Okay. Moving on then to item 4.3, which is to consider the report on planning enforcement strategy, paper C.
Thank you, Chair. So members, as part of the Council's local planning improvement programme, we're currently in phase 3 of that. Planning officers and planning committee members held a workshop back in November, and that workshop focused on a review of the existing planning enforcement strategy. And the council's approach to the various improvement options then was agreed. A planning committee on the 12th of December passed. The draft enforcement strategy attached to Appendix 1 then was subsequently discussed and agreed at planning committee in March just passed, and it was agreed that it would then be presented to this committee for approval. So the purpose then of this report really is to seek agreement on the revised enforcement strategy. So I've set out just some key issues around the planning improvement programme, and members will be aware there's a number of initiatives that have already been implemented, which are working really well. And then this phase 3 would be the final phase of that current improvement programme. So I take members then specifically to the enforcement section of the report, which is 2.6. So members will note that there's an appendix attached, Appendix 1. Appendix 1 really sets out the various different options that have been discussed in reviewing the current enforcement strategy and what that might then look like going forward for the revised strategy. So members will note then that options 5 to 12, which are in Appendix 1, and 14 to 16 are included then in the revised enforcement strategy. And then also to note that option 13 and 17 have not been taken forward as part of the amended enforcement strategy at this time. So option 13 was where that's where the department have parallel. So the Department for Infrastructure, they have parallel enforcement powers. And the discussion around that was that, that the council would expect the department to take enforcement action where it is a departmental decision. But our discussion on that and where we've agreed the way forward is that officers recommend that this option wouldn't be taken forward at this stage and remains under consideration, because ultimately the council, we don't want to fetter our discretion at this stage, because we may look to take potential enforcement action in the future and we don't want to fetter that. And then option 17 was around investigating where there are options for the council to recover costs incurred during enforcement investigations. So again, that option's discussed. We obviously took some advice from our legal advisors, and we've set out the preferred approach there would be to include a general comment within the strategy, which we have done in relation to the recovery of costs where an opportunity exists. And then the next steps in relation to the revised enforcement strategy, the subject agreement would be to engage with our local agents to update them in relation to enforcement strategy. And then the other options that were agreed with members and the date when it will take effect. The revised enforcement strategy will require just some formatting to make it, I suppose, more of a public-facing document. And officers would suggest then that subject agreement that the new strategy would take effect from the 12th of May, and that date would tie in with the date that we would be suggesting around our revised validation checklist as well. So in terms of the recommendations then, the recommendation is that the council agrees the revised enforcement strategy, which is attached to Appendix 1.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Not seeing any indications either online or in the chamber. If we don't have any comments, members, then can I maybe just get a proposer and a seconder then? See, Councillor McColgan and Councillor Campbell. Okay, we're all agreed? All agreed, thank you. Moving on then to item 4.4, which is to consider the report of the Director of Regeneration Planning, Paper D.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to consider a series of updates. So the first one is in relation to our economic inward investment steering group, advisor group for sub-regional plan. So I suppose just taking that one first then, our last meeting of the subgroup met on the 20th of March. So at that meeting, we discussed a visit we had undertaken to the CoLab facility in Letterkenny. It was a really, I think, a successful visit. And members noted just the importance of the New Frontier programme to the success of the CoLab in terms of the occupants. And it was agreed then that it would be helpful to receive an update on what that New Frontiers programme involves and whether there's any similar programmes in Northern Ireland. So when I progress through the report, I'll talk a little bit more about New Frontiers. Members also discussed the important role of education curriculum in terms of promoting entrepreneurism, and agreed we should seek further information on that in the context of it being delivered in schools. We also discussed the recent meeting, which also followed on from the CoLab meeting, where we engaged with Donegal County Council on their Donegal Diaspora project, as they refer to it. And we've agreed we would undertake further engagement with them on that. Members also received an update on the sub-regional economic plan and the steps that are intended around that in terms of consultation. And officers are finalising plans to progress the consultation with industry, hopefully in late April or early May. And as part of that, then we would also undertake, as I've mentioned in previous report, consultation with the tourism industry. And then we would have a separate consultation with our economic advisory group. There was also an update provided in terms of our ongoing monthly meetings, which we have with Invest NI. And I've proposed a pilot to commence a joint Invest NI Southwest College and Fermanagh District Council clinic within each DEA. So the purpose of the clinics really would be to provide an opportunity for the council, Invest NI and the college really to update the public and businesses on the support and offer, and to provide information on how they can go about accessing that. And then I suppose just to look maybe in a little bit more detail at the New Frontiers programme. I've set out some just summary update on the programme there, but then the intention would be that we would bring a more up-to-date and detailed report on that to the next working group. So members will note there just that particular programme is run by Enterprise Ireland. And that would be obviously available then to those who are a resident in Donegal and would be availing of that at the CoLab. And it sets out then just the different phases of that programme and the type of funding that's available. And then the next section of the report is an update on our OMA Opportunity Sites Working Group. We met in February. We discussed our visit to St Lucia's site and agreed that we value then in taking forward, I suppose, a learning exercise visit to both Ebrington Barracks site and also St Patrick's Barracks site. There was also an update provided in relation to the work that's going on regarding terms of reference for a revised master plan for St Lucia. And we had also issued correspondence to DFI and DFC regarding financial support for a refresh of the master plan. And if members just don't mind, I'll take them to Appendix 2 and 3 of the report, where that communication back then from DFI and DFC have been returned to us. Essentially, DFC have shared on a funding application form, which they have said we can complete and submit in to apply for funding for that refresh of the master plan. And then members will note that DFI have explained that they don't have any funding for a master plan for the site. And then as part of that same meeting, members also discussed issues around maintenance vandalism at the St Lucia's site. We agreed that we would progress communication through to the department on that particular issue and then seek any conditions survey that might be available. And then we also discussed the vacated school sites and work around the Struil campus. And also members agreed it would be helpful to seek clarification on the timescale for any removal of the remaining trees that are to be removed on Mountjoy Road. And just on that particular point then, we've had an update from DFI in the recent days to advise that they intend to remove those remaining trees that are on Mountjoy Road. And they would intend to undertake that work this Friday evening. So the work would be from 7 o'clock in the evening through on to the following morning between 10 and 11. So it's just to note that the park, the Grange Park then would be closed as part of that, and we would intend to progress social media updates as part of that. And then members also discussed the Meet the Buyer event, which took place obviously in the Silverbridge Hotel back in February as part of that discussion. And then if I move on then to the other aspects of the report that are for noting. So just to note that correspondence has been received from DFC to confirm funding of 750,000 for the purposes of the National Museum's NI in the development of the outline business case for the Ulster American Folk Park. And it would be intended that the council will issue a letter of offer to the Ulster American Folk Park in relation to those funds in the coming days. We also have included an update in relation to Peace Plus funding. So the council received confirmation at the end of March that the funding application to SEUPB under the Peace Plus programme had been approved for grant funding of over 8.4 million. And just to note then that that funding is for 100% of the project cost and no match funding is required for the project. And members will be aware that that relates specifically in our district to our Newton Butler project. And then there's also an update just in terms of letters of offer. So our OMA Livable Laneways, there's an extension of time on that particular funding allocation, and then also an update in terms of Department for Communities Neighbourhood Renewal in terms of an interim funding position. So members then, if I go to the recommendations, so it's recommended then the council note the update on the Economic Inward Investment Steering and Advisory Group Sub-Regional Plan and approves the recommendations of the March meeting of the group, which are set out in detail at the end of the report. Also notes the update on the OMA Opportunity Sites Working Group and approves the recommendations of the February meeting of the group, which are also then set out in detail at the end of the report. And notes the update on the notification of Ulster American Folk Park project funding, notes the update on the Peace Plus funding, notes a letter of offer from DFC on the OMA Livable Laneways, and notes a 25-26 interim funding position in relation to neighbourhood renewal.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go to Councillor McElduff.
I want to ask our director to repeat that. This is a very comprehensive report. There's so much in it. I'm happy to propose the adoption of this report. And I think we've covered a lot of the territory in other meetings recently. obviously we'll get an update from the local economic partnership soon as well, but I think that comes after the community planning meeting. And just livable laneways. Is there a scheme open at this time for laneways to be identified in an urban setting which could be transformed? Is that essentially what is being said there?
Ashley?
Thanks, Chair. So that's essentially, it's a project that we've been working with DFC colleagues on as part of, I suppose, a forward work plan that would be looking at that and also opportunities maybe for wider work and I suppose outworkings from both of our place shaping plans as well. So that particular project is something that we have an application that we're working on with them. So at the minute we would have been focusing on the Foundry Lane progress. So you would have noticed the work that had been completed there. And then also looking at, I'm going to get the name wrong now, but is it Old Market Arcade, the one that runs down the side of Bob and Bert Sonoma? So that would have been the other area. And then we're also investigating what other area might be as part of that project.
Okay, just Chair, I want to commend our committee chair for his interest in the Foundry Lane project as well. He showed a great interest in it. One possible area just for looking at, Councillor Thompson would be very familiar and Councillor McColgan, would be at the rear of New Brighton Terrace. It's kind of an unusual wee lane that could be transformed in a town environment, maybe quite easily, you know, be a major enhancement, just to take a look at that. But other than that, I'm happy to propose the adoption and have a great interest in that New Frontier programme following on from our visit to the CoLab and all of that. But sure, we can develop some of these ideas later. Thank you, Chair.
Not sure if I have to declare an interest because I have a sibling who would be very interested in that particular area being looked at as well.
Right, okay, that's right.
But no, that's fine. Let's see. Also, just for the sake of tidiness, just if this report's being proposed, also just alongside it, just counted as adoption of the 2 letters of correspondence as well,
Okay.
just alongside it. That's fine. Councillor Campbell.
Harley, well, I do want to commend our officer for a very detailed and the team, of course, for a detailed report. I was glad to hear of the visit to CoLab. I'm familiar with the site in Letterkenny, having worked on the site for a company a good few years ago. And I think there's a great benefit, and I know I'm biased, but there's a great benefit in supporting innovation on the site of a university, you know, and I suppose a declared interest with Southwest College. I know they're mentioned in the report, but I think, you know, there is, from personal experience, it's a great environment to be innovative and to access skills and knowledge and to inspire other people as well, you know. So lots of good reasons why that would have been an important visit for the steering group, which I'm not a member of. And I would also say I would support the efforts there to get more information on entrepreneurship. I am aware that, you know, secondary schools, for example, will be doing lots of good work on that. And really, if you want to support innovation, the younger the mind that you deal with, the better, because they don't have the barriers and the fears that everyone else has as they get older, so that the barriers aren't there at that young age. So certainly that'd be interesting just to see the extent of entrepreneurship across the whole education sector. So that'd be a nice report to get back. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thompson. Let me try the mouse. Sorry, Councillor Thompson, 1 second. Yep.
You know, okay, thanks, Chair. First of all, like others, I want to commend Director McAvoy and her team for all the work that they've been doing on all of these matters, and this very in-depth reports, as already been said. I want to focus on the Home Opportunity Sites Working Group. I want to commend you for all that you've been doing there, and it's a great wee team that we work with here, and we want to progress and you know, bring this town to full fruition, if you like, to see where we go with it. But I welcome the planning for the site visits to Irvington and St Patrick's Barracks in Ballymena. I think that's required. Just you had mentioned there, Sinead, about it was Old Marketplace. Used to be known as a back market years ago. It's Old Marketplace that you referred to. And just with regard to New Brighton Terrace that Councillor McIntosh mentioned, I think that would be an ideal solution there to the rear of New Brighton Terrace, which takes you down into the Foundry Lane, the edge of Foundry Lane car park. Just with regard to Market Street Arcade, I think it is, and we had discussions about that maybe last month. Can we have an update at that some stage? I'm not expecting it tonight, but if we can have an update as to where we are with that, with the various businesses there involved, and obviously post the Oma bomb and the Oma bomb inquiry. That'll be great. I do welcome also the DFC minister's contribution when he was in the United States of America announcing the money going to the Ulster American Folk Park, which is to be very, very welcome, especially when we come to the west again. The west of Northern Ireland is going to gain from this, so that's great stuff. So happy to support. Thank you.
Okay. Are you happy to second that, Councillor Thompson? Yeah. Oh, was it seconded actually, or? Oh, no, fail. No, handy enough. Councillor Warren. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rainey. Yeah. Yeah, that's the right one. Second. Yeah.
I too would want to commend you for the presentation of that report. I suppose the walkabout and the site visit, it was unbelievable. The state of the buildings that we saw, and against that, the dereliction of some of them, you know, just with the passing of time. But however, the upmarket buildings that are on it, you know, is really someone to behold. Foundry Lane, that's Henderson's. That was my first lone journey to Oma. I was put on the bus and told not to get off till the bus would stop in the bus depot. And then I had an instruction map with me how I would get to Henderson's. And I had a section of a blade for a pulper, and that's something for grinding up potatoes for the cows or whatever. And I always remember Mr. Henderson Sr. And he very kindly took the new blades and nipped the point off them for me. I wouldn't have known till I was home that I had a boogie home with me, but he made sure he had them nipped off and the necessary screws to fit it. So I had a very successful outing to Oma town on my own. I couldn't have been too big when I was sent on that mission, but I always remember it clearly. And each time that I walk up and down Henderson's, I call it Henderson's Entry, Foundry Lane, always reflect back to the early days on going to Oma. Thank you, Chair. It's a lot of useless information, but it's important to me.
No, fair play, Councillor Rainey. I learn something new every meeting that I have with you, so fair play to you. And I suppose actually just on that broader point, actually, I mean, I think Foundry Lane is actually an excellent example of the kind of regeneration that is possible, not just within Oma, but right across the district. And hopefully within the context of the place shaping plans, we can see more of that positive work develop in the years to come, because it's been a fantastic boost for the town. Councillor McElduff. Sorry, my computer stopped working. I need to require them. Yeah, go ahead.
Councillor Rainey's story was very interesting about Henderson's. It reminded me of my late uncle Jack's first visit from Loch McCrory to Oma, and he got a long piece of wood, and he was walking past Wellworth's window, and somebody shouted his name, and he turned around, broke the window accidentally with the long piece of wood. But my first journey on a bus to Oma was to get a size 5 O'Neill's football in the Fairway stores. So we can all retrace those memories.
Councillor Thompson, you got any stories? Hold on one sec. Let's see.
Just a very quick one on Councillor Rennie there. There's not too many in the chamber would actually remember Henderson's Foundry, but I'm one of them, along with Councillor Rennie. It was a thriving business down at the back of where the entry is now. Thriving business there for many, many years. And then it moved to Brook Street after that. But it was certainly something to behold when you were on there. Just leave it there. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's been proposed and seconded, and I think we're content. Content? Good stuff. Thank you very much. Okay. Do we have 1 or 2 more items of correspondence then? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Jen.
Thank you, Chair. The first piece of correspondence from Monaghan County Council in relation to an application which they're planning to make on the Peace Plus for a feasibility study on the border to see, to explore how communities were impacted as a result of the border. And they'd like to do a scoping exercise to see the extent of the issue and identify solutions they're looking for. From Ananoma District Council, if they would be interested in being involved in the project, in expressing an interest and looking for a commitment from the council in relation to the project. As Bush Chair, it would be good to find out, if they talk about scoping, I think it would be good to find out their terms of reference for the project, and thereafter, make a decision in relation to it, just to see the extent of the application itself and what exactly they're proposing to do in relation to the project.
Okay. Councillor Green. Sorry.
Yeah, I would propose that recommendation there from John. It would be a worthwhile project, I think, if we could get involved.
Okay, not seeing any further indications. Can we just get a seconder then, just to note that and sort of that action, I guess? So Councillor Donnelly. Great. Okay. Then is there another piece of, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So the second piece of correspondence then is a letter from DFE. So this is a response to a piece of correspondence we had issued out following on a previous Regeneration Community Committee where we had received the briefing around school leavers qualifications and qualification equivalents. So we had at that meeting agreed that we would write to the Department for Economy and a number of other bodies as well, which we haven't had the response back from, to advocate for a new funding formula to take into account the increased cost of living for students in Northern Ireland staying in Dublin. So we've had a comprehensive response back from DFE. They have set out, I suppose, the Minister's commitment to removing barriers to student mobility, both for students from the south who want to study in the north and vice versa. And the note that to address this, the department has worked with students to design and publish improved information and guidance for students from here wishing to apply to higher education in the south. They've also set out then the financial, I suppose, the range of what they refer to as support for students who want to study in the south. And then they've gone on to explain that full-time undergraduate students from Northern Ireland studying in the south can also apply for means tested maintenance support to cover living costs, and they've set out what that includes. They've also explained that students from here undertaking postgraduate courses in the south can also avail of postgraduate tuition fee loan and the details around that. And then they've also concluded by advising that the department will be briefing the Minister for the Economy regarding a potential review of higher education funding in the coming weeks. And it's anticipated that student support funding will be included in the review, but the detailed scope has not yet been determined. And obviously the overall review means it's subject to ministerial approval.
Okay, Councillor McElduff. Second.
Right. To propose the adoption of that correspondence, it's a very important topic, is removing barriers to north-south mobility in respect of education, higher education and further education. So useful detail contained therein. I'm happy to propose the adoption of the correspondence.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll go to Councillor Withers.
Yeah, just to second the note and share and share the sentiment of Councillor McElduff there with regards to removing barriers and improving mobility north-south for students. And hopefully the review that's going to be taking place will include a review of the finance that will be available for students that are traveling to the south for education purposes and getting their degrees and that. So with increased cost of living in Dublin area, it's definitely warranted and necessary. So hopefully that'll be the case. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. That's proposed and seconded. And I think we're agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, members, we're now at item 6, which is any urgent and relevant business. I've been contacted by 2 members. I'm going to go first to Councillor McElduff. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Gordon Mayogat. This topic is well known to yourself, to other Omagh town councillors, and to our director, John Boyle, not least. And it's the whole issue. Councillor McColgan feels strongly about this as well. We chatted earlier about how strong an issue it is, this. The Brookmount Road, Omagh, and St Connor's Primary School and Lammy. Now, I won't rehearse everything, but we've discussed this previously in the council, and it's the issue of parking, pick-up times and drop-off times in relation to St Connor's Primary School, which is an excellent school. And there's a whole series of issues that intertwine and have created a problem, which is lack of traffic flow, parking difficulties, even impacting on good relations between people in that area. It used to be that Brook Street was a big problem until it was made a one-way system, you know, in terms of the 2 sites of Holy Family Primary School. So there isn't that problem there now. Thankfully, that's resolved. But for a good number of years now, this has exercised everybody hugely. And there was kind of an impromptu meeting on the Green on Thursday evening, at which you yourself were able to attend, Chair. And really what I'm asking for is to progress a previous initiative, which is to have an interagency roundtable meeting, maybe this time involving interested councillors or available councillors, as well as the relevant agencies. You're talking about the Education Authority, you're talking about DE, you're talking about PSNI, you're talking about the school community, residents, DFA. So recent issues, you know, to talk about the recent issues that have, you know, inflamed tensions a bit. And then secondly, it's my understanding that the Department of Education has put on a list, a minor works programme, work to be carried out there, but this would be obviously facilitated and accommodated well by the council. The council, as I understand it, at looking at a series of measures that would create a solution or a part solution there, might involve transferring a small portion of land to DE for the purpose of creating a drive-in, drive-out area. But we'd want to get an update on where all of that is at. Maybe I propose that we write to the Department of Education, to the Minister, just flagging up that this is a priority issue and asking what is the nature of the works that they intend to carry out and the timeline for the carrying out of those works. And then while that correspondence has been dealt with, I do think we need an interagency meeting to deal with some of the issues in the here and now. That's my proposal, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McElduff. To see Councillor McColgan indicating. Oh. Councillor McColgan.
Chair, I'd just like to second Councillor McElduff's proposal. As you're aware, this is an issue that's been going on for years, and there has been various site visits, looks at different agencies looking at this issue over the past, and there had been a a suggestion in the past where there would be maybe a piece of land from the council if DFI had adopted or the Education Authority, and maybe now that's something that could progress, but it's certainly been a thorn in the side for a long number of years. So certainly agree with Councillor McAuliffe. Second is proposed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McCullough. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't think I was invited to the meeting on Thursday. Not that I'm aware of, anyway. Right, okay. Anyway, I'm happy to support the proposal and seconder with regard to this, because it is an important issue. It's in Connors. You know, those of us who use that road, even in the morning there, you can see, and in the afternoon again, it's like a blockade, and it definitely needs sorted. And as Councillor McColgan has said there, it's been ongoing for years, so we need to come to a conclusion. Happy to support, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. And actually, I suppose just for a few words from myself, can I thank Councillor McAuliffe for bringing forward this proposal. Having attended that meeting on site in Lammy on Thursday, I mean, the feelings are running quite high on this issue and has been for quite some time. And I think that as a council, it's important actually that we put on record our thanks to Paddy Hunter, who has been a very loud voice in championing the needs of people in Lammy for quite some time, particularly around these parking issues. And I think what was quite clear from the voices of many of the residents that turned out on the green on that night is that there's just a real fear about the continuing block that is essentially being placed on many people trying to get out of their homes, whether it be in terms of ambulance access, getting to hospital appointments, just trying to get out and go to work. And there's a real need to try and get eventually to a solution that takes some of the heat and the tension out of this situation, because ultimately that's a solution that will work for everybody. I'm just going to go to Councillor Rainey here.
Well, thank you, Chair. And I'm going to ask you, would you take a late for me to come in with a late subject? If it compromises your position, get about it, you know.
Yeah, apologies, Councillor Rainey. I would need to have been informed in advance, so I'm sorry about that. But no, we're just going to wrap up this item of business first. I'm going to go back to Councillor McAuliffe.
I visited the location yesterday, and again, you know, access. But what strikes me is that all the parties concerned are great people, all good people. There's people who want to park there to collect children from school. They're good people. The people who reside in Lammy are good people. The people that manage the school are good people. So we just need a resolution that fits everybody, and it will take some creativity. And there's a real solid offer there from this council to the Department of Education. As I understand it, is not the requisite body that needs to receive that offer. And it's them that's looking at taking this forward as a minor works program. So what is the nature of that work that they understand, and when is it going to be carried out? Like, I mean, is it too much to hope that that could be done for September 25? I'll just leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McAuliffe. We've got a proposer and a seconder. I think we've got agreement in the chamber, so that's for an interagency meeting on site with the relevant stakeholders, as well as corresponding with the Department for Education regarding the status of where this is in terms of minor works and sort of future prospects around progressing this. So we're agreed? Okay, agreed. Okay, one last item of business, and that is Councillor Warrington with his item of any other business.
Thank you, Chair, for accepting this. I was contacted by one of my constituents at the end of last week, and their problem was, well, not a problem as such, was the Ardone Theatre. There was obviously a few very popular shows on in the last couple of weeks there, which meant that there was a lot of vehicles was parking out on the main road going in. Now, his gripe, well, obviously he nearly had a near miss because of the way the vehicles were parked, etc. But the same gentleman drove into the actual car park and basically seen that there was quite a number of spaces free which the cars on the road, a lot of the cars on the road could have availed of. So really what he's asking is there anything that we can do to basically to alleviate the parking on the road? I know it's still going to happen, but at least until the car park spaces are fully utilised in the car park. And I know obviously that space is tight there, so maybe if one of the directors could give guidance on what we can do there, if anything. Thank you.
Okay, John?
Thank you, Chair. It is an issue, and I think it's been reported previously here to council about the issue of parking at the Ardone on a night when the Ardone is fully booked out. The car parking isn't sufficient to hold for the full number of cars that would be available when it is a full night. It's the first time I've heard that cars parked on the road when there are spaces available. We have just in the last number of weeks asked for the car park on the right hand side as you go into the overflow car park effectively for the Ardone, for it to be relined, because I know my own experience in the Ardone that the number of spaces that are available are not taken up there because the lines are totally worn in the car park and people don't park in an orderly fashion. So in the next number of weeks, we do hope that the Ardone, that overflow car park will be relined, and hopefully that should alleviate the need for car parking. In order to stop people from parking on the road just for a handy way out, even though there is parking spaces available in the car park, is very difficult. I suppose what we can do on a night when we anticipate large crowds is to have someone out in the car park and facilitate and making sure that the car parking spaces that are available are used. And I suppose we can start that process, and encouraging people or asking people to move inside rather than park out on the road. It is an issue though, even at that, there are not insufficient places, and it's a site that is landlocked, even with our development that we had proposed a number of years ago for the redevelopment of the Ardone. There was only going to be an additional 6 spaces or something like that from memory, I think in a redeveloped Ardone positions. So, and it doesn't happen that often, but it does happen 4 or 5 times during the year.
Thank you for that. I suppose maybe your suggestion there of putting like somebody on, if there's a really busy night, somebody on for the want of a better terminology, a car parking attendant would obviously maybe help the situation. I suppose the other thing, and we'll propose that at the next RNC, is construction of a multi-storey car park. Thank you.
It's good to have bold aspirations for Councillor Warrington. Okay, members, that's the last item of business. Thank you very much for your attendance. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Actually, formally, can we get a seconder just then for that? Not for the multi-story car park, but okay, we're agreed. Bye. Okay, folks, that is it. And thank you very much for your attendance, and safe home.